Welcome to It's Just Middle School with Sarah and
Kelly. If you're joining us for the first time today, we are two fabulous veteran middle school teachers with middle schoolers of our own that love talking about middle school.
Our passion is to support parents and educators in understanding the middle school years through research, experience, and casual conversation.
If you're returning to our show, welcome back. Let's jump into this episode's buzzword, growth mindset.
What do we mean by growth mindset?
Why is it important for middle school stakeholders to focus on the process and not just the outcome?
And how do I help my child navigate their growth despite the outcome?
I give up. My brain just can't do it.
Scenario 1. Your child comes home excited about a project for science. They have so many ideas. They're bubbling with things to tell you. And it's difficult as a parent sometimes to figure out how to even go about this process. You weren't in class. You didn't hear the assignment. How many projects have you done with them so far? Where are you going to come up with a fresh idea? Doesn't the teacher know that you have a major work deadline this week and you're just stressed to the max yourself? So maybe you resign to go onto Amazon, or give your child your Amazon account and click, click, click. All the supplies are at your door in just a couple of days. And then you just happen to click on some AI assistant to collect the research, all done for you. You know there's going to be a struggle with time, and your son or daughter may not even want to participate or deal with the hours of planning this is going to take. So you're snipping, cutting, gluing, all of the things, and you think, man, this project is going to look great, and all the times just the deadlines are going to get hit, and you've got this. All thinking you're doing it in the best interest of your child. Sound familiar?
Or, after assigning a project as an educator, you wonder how much time can be given in class for students to work on the assignment. You realize that most of the time students are spending socializing and not really advancing on their assignment despite any misdirects or redirecting that you've done. So you allow them to work on it at home, but you fear that what you will get is a parent-made project or a project that is not truly their own. But at least there will be an environment that has a better chance at stronger focus and accessibility to resources. They've had time to ask questions in class, time they've squandered, and now it is up to them to finish on their own time at home. Sound familiar? Perhaps if it were a group project, it would be easier. It would certainly be easier to grade. Scenario 2. Your child comes home and is upset about the essay grade they received in English class, an 89%. You might think an 89% is pretty decent, or maybe you think it is the worst grade imaginable. How do we as parents react? Do we say, "Congratulations, good job on such an achievement," or praise them for doing their best? Or do we say, "Why not a 90%? Or do we focus on a bit of both? What did you make a mistake on? Do you know why you made them? Do we focus on achievement or growth?
Or, as a teacher, you carefully went through the writing process with your class on an upcoming essay, providing feedback along the way. You may not have gotten to every student individually, but you did discuss common mistakes with all the students in mini lessons. You even crafted a rubric ahead of time. But you notice the students are barely paying attention to it. The final assignment is turned in. You graded it based on the rubric, and you have an average of an 89%. Some sprinkled A's and some sprinkled C's. You can't help but wonder why every student did not get an A, especially with a rubric. If they had proofread, perhaps, or maybe another day of peer editing was needed. Now, do you decide to move on with the unit or continue to develop the gaps in understanding? Do you even have time to do that? Do you offer extra credit, a reflection opportunity? Do you give points back? How do you allow for growth in understanding for all students?
When the discussion of a growth mindset comes up, it is always about continuation of learning. It is about emphasizing the process over the product.
Today, we want to eliminate some of the pressure of turning in the perfect assignment. Now, this is when the final 100% holds more value than the learning that happens along the way. Please hear us. Middle school isn't just about the final product. It's about all the growth that happens in between. Of course, we want good information and we want a project that looks presentable. But what we really want to see is that students are present during the process.
And now for a wee bit of research.
Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, published in 2007. It rocked the world of education as it defined clearly what it means to learn by differentiating a fixed mindset from a growth mindset. In it, she defined success as a belief system. If one has a fixed mindset, one believes that traits, talents, skills are absolutely unchangeable. So phrases like, "I'm just not good at math," or "my brother is the athlete, not me," represent an acceptance of limitations, that traits are fixed. She equates a fixed mindset to that of a superhero. If one has a growth mindset, one believes that there is always room for improvement, that traits are a starting point. Traits can not only change, but grow beyond their starting point. Phrases like, "I don't understand yet, but what I understand now is," can we go over it again? It would be equating it to Edison's embracing of mistakes in the invention of the light bulb to achieve the goal and to continue forward from there.
She writes, today, most experts agree that it's not either or, actually. It's not nature or nurture, genes or environment. From conception on, there's a constant give and take between the two. In fact, Gilbert Gottlieb, an eminent neuroscientist, put it, not only do genes and the environment cooperate as we develop, but genes require input from the environment to work properly. At the same time, scientists are learning that people have more capacity for lifelong learning and brain development than they ever thought. Of course, each person has a unique genetic endowment. People may start with different temperaments and different aptitudes, but it's clear that experience, training, and personal effort take them the rest of the way. Robert Sternberg, the present-day guru of intelligence, writes that the major factor in whether people achieve expertise, and I quote, is not some fixed prior ability, but purposeful engagement, end quote.
What's interesting is that before Dweck, there was Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, and before that, IQ tests. Kelly, do you remember taking anything in middle school or high school that would have said, you are destined or suitable for this career based on your traits and skill set?
Oh, yes. And we took it in 10th grade, and then we had to meet with the counselor about what area we should focus our college or non-college choices around.
Yeah.
Mine was all like the service stuff. Like, you should be a counselor, you should be a teacher, you should be a nurse. And surprise, surprise, here I am, actually in teaching. But yes, I do remember that very, very well.
We took a career assessment in 8th grade before we went to high school, so we would know what courses were the best course for us and the trajectory that we were going to hit on based on the high school track, based on what we were strong in or what we felt our strengths were in this sort of career. Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Do you like service acts, or do you like the concept of economy and money? Like, it was very specific questions.
And isn't that funny how that can dictate your path? Even like my mom, I remember her telling me they had to take these decades before us.
Yeah.
And she met with her counselor, and they're like, you're not college material.
Oh my goodness.
You need to just be a secretary somewhere. And years later, she ended up going into nursing school, and she is a fabulous nurse. But she had to overcome the fact that her counselor told her this test said she couldn't do that. She didn't have the math ability to do it.
And I think, and so this Carol Dweck really truly rocked the world because it was saying no to that. Like, that is that you can overcome and train your brain.
Fixed mindset, especially when it's your passion.
Yes, I think
like
that's
when your
so
passion
important.
overcomes the fixed things in your world. like the growth mindset can just go crazy.
Yeah. And so all of these, like even in college, they started doing like IFTP. Are you introverted, extroverted? Are you this kind of thinker and that kind of thinker? And it labels and defines and limits those possibilities. And what Carol Dweck says in Growth Mindset is that everything can be changed, and it just takes training the brain. And all the books that came from this is really interesting. So that was published in 2007, but since then there've been so many publishers that kind of center on this theory of growth mindset, on what she was finding, such as Grit by Angela Duckworth, that talks about resilience, and you have Atomic Habits by James Clear that looked at extending the mind to saying, yes, you can do something, nothing is limited. And then David Epstein's Range talks about how all of this experience that you've cultivated is not narrowed down into one kind of experience. So all the diversity of experiences actually is transformational in what you are currently doing and has value to what you're currently doing. And then there's most recently, there's something on achievement culture with Never Enough by Jennifer Wallace, and we're going to talk about assessment for the next episode, so stay tuned for assessment. But all of these books have to start with this growth mindset.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of these books that educators are studying up on then can cultivate programs in schools, which can be good and bad sometimes. Yeah. But the whole STEAM or STEM initiative that was created in so many schools now has been created because of some of these skills that kind of we've realized that are lacking when we've focused so long on this is the pattern that you fall into with the DISC training and the multiple intelligences, and focusing on building what you're good at. The growth mindset piece also fosters, well, let's focus on maybe the places where we need to build up where you're not so good at.
Yeah. And so as you were saying, it kind of goes from, you hear this like factory model of education, that you're going into school and you're going to be cultivated to be yourself as a product to fulfill this particular career or job opportunity that centers around earlier theories and this transformational thinking that talks about how anything can change, that your brain can train itself to do whatever it wants to do, and you can change, you can grow. That looks at inquiry-based instruction, that looks at innovation thinking, like you were saying, that stems from, that created STEM and STEAM, and so you have these programs that nurture...
well, it looks at, there's more than one way to solve a problem.
Yes.
It focuses on that concept, and there's just one way. Now, I do think that knowing your multiple intelligences and knowing what you score on the DISC has relevance. Yeah. Like you can look at where your natural strengths are to know where you can build off of.
Correct. But it doesn't determine what's possible. And I think that's the shift. Like nothing is determined, nothing is set, nothing is fixed in what you are taught and what you can become. It is absolutely limitless, which is also another book that came out, Limitless.
Yes. And if this, concept of growth mindset is kind of rocking your world, just remember, you just don't know everything about it yet.
Yet is such a really cool word with the growth mindset, right? So, and it's an important word because it's saying that, okay, I don't understand something. It's not I can't understand something. It's I don't understand something now yet. But
if I work hard on it, I
can. You can.
There's the possibility is there.
It reminds me of that the engine that could, right? Like the little engine. I think I can. Going over that mountain, right? It's really centered on that sense of growth in schools. Where do you see growth mindset flourish in your class, Kelly?
Well, I use the yet a lot. I do see that, but teaching math has actually been a bigger thing than teaching science, just based on the fact that science is so much about inquiry. Yeah. And you can really start with a problem and let students problem solve back. It's a lot harder to do that in math because students and parents very much want the steps before they solve the problem versus here's a problem, let's see how could we solve this before we actually do solve it. Like there's and it's just kind of that old school thought process too. Like here's the problem, here's the steps to do it, here's the outcome.
Yeah.
But a lot of kids can see an outcome before you even give them the solution.
Yeah.
If you let them.
Yeah.
But some kids do need the steps, and you have to kind of work through that a little bit too. But there is, I think the best thing is when you can have conversation in math that leads to some of that inquiry before they even realize it. Because so many kids come in and say, I'm not a math person.
Yeah.
They have that built in and already ingrained in 7th grade, which is crazy.
That's awful.
But I have a poster in my room that I love, and when they say that, I point to it, and it says, how to be a math person. Step 1, be a person. Step 2, do math.
I love that.
And I'm like, that's all you need to do.
Well, I think the draw to math is that it's super linear, and there's comfort in that, those steps, that linear trajectory, because you can see those steps. And then when you are in this place of diverse growth, whether it is in math, science, those steps can get a little fuzzy sometimes, and that trajectory isn't known, and there's sort of like a fear of all the possibilities.
Right.
Like, so that's in the growth mindset. It is sort of embracing the challenge of what is the unknown, right? And completely embracing it, and completely using what you have in front of you, what you apply from your studies to whatever product you are envisioning. And that can be very, very messy. Middle school is
messy.
All about mess. It is just a messy place to be, and it's beautiful, but the need for an understanding of where you're going is very, very powerful and very, very tempting, but it also can be very limited. And so in a growth mindset, it kind of allows students to kind of take a trajectory that's maybe off the linear path.
Right.
And
we really want to make sure they're working through the process and allowing the practice of executive functioning skills that we discussed in our last episode. So if you didn't listen to that one, check out more about executive functioning.
Yeah. So that idea of transforming, going to another place, right? Getting out of that linear mindset, that fixed mindset, goes back to really focusing on the process and understanding what those steps look like, and tweaking those steps based on the outcome. So it's really centered on the process itself to get to the product.
And if it doesn't work out, going back to try again. And that's something that I do see a lot of students struggle with in math is they get the final answer. And if it's not right, they're just like, well, it's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, they don't necessarily want to make corrections. And one of my favorite assignments that we do is I give them a problem and there's something wrong in it.
Yeah.
And they have to figure out where the mistake is.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, part of learning is figuring out where the mistake is made and how to correct it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big part of the growth mindset is how do we overcome and correct when we make the mistakes we do.
Yes, and I think with middle school particularly, the brain is just focusing on developing metacognition. They are, that abstract thinking is kicking in. They are able to become more aware of themselves and how they are perceived by others. Like, that is all new to them. And so by asking to reflect on their process, or asking them to reflect on what they're doing now, where they want to go always, and having this kind of flexibility in that process mindset, that growth mindset, you're also developing metacognitive skills. And so that they can kind of be more self-aware of what they can do and where they need to go to get to where they want to be.
So it allows them to adjust if an idea doesn't work, and it helps develop autonomy and perseverance. When we as parents jump in and do the process for them, we take away the opportunities for them to practice these skills. And then in the classroom, they get overwhelmed because they don't have the confidence that's been built from their past experiences. Let me tell you a story. So when my oldest brought home this famous person project, he had all these amazing ideas. I want to do this. I want to do this. And as he's working on this project, I was like, this looks awful. Like, how is this going to happen? Like, it's just like all these anxieties about how this was going to look to his teacher and how this was going to look to other parents and other students. All of these things were flowing through my head, thinking that everyone was like, they're going to think I'm an awful parent letting my kid turn this in. And like, I was like, oh, buddy, what if, like, how about we do this? And I got some supplies out and I, started like, ooh, let's cut this out and glue this here. Yeah. And my husband stepped in and he was like, can I talk to you? And I was like, oh, sure, I'll bring it back, and he's like, whose project is this? And I was like, well, it's our son's. And he's like, then why are you taking over? And I was like, oh. Like, it was a reality check that I so needed, but I couldn't see it. Yeah. Because all of the pressure that I felt that I had to present was like a judgment on me. Yeah. And I had to really realize that this wasn't my role. When he asked, hey, Mom, do we have construction paper for this? Yeah, let me get it for you. Yeah, I'll get the construction paper out. Yeah. Or, when he came to me with ideas, how could I do this? Or I could share, that looks a little small. Maybe you could try black letters. Right. But at the same time, if he didn't like that idea, I had to be okay with the rejection of him not liking my idea.
Right. So I think as parents, there's this transition from a lower school world where we do get lots of projects to kind of model the process, then to a middle school world where we're no longer modeling, we're really trying to let them be their own person and to kind of let go of control a little bit. And
so a little bit. It is baby steps.
Yes.
Like, there are baby steps involved in that. Sometimes parents get to 6th grade and their kid brings home this project and they're like, okay, you're on your own. Peace out. There has to be that balance. Like, you still want to be involved in the process, but kind of like we talked about, more like a sous chef versus the main chef.
So in middle school, here are some steps to help your kid cook. Let's go!
To cook in middle school terms means to let think. So we thought it would be a great idea to use this term here. To let them work, to let them think, to let them simmer, to perform. And we thought we'd compare it to the idea of a Thanksgiving meal and add some extra sparkle.
So when you think about Thanksgiving, we spend a great deal of time with the process, with actually cooking everything we're preparing for our families.
I can already smell it.
Yeah, right. Smell the turkey. We make the mashed potatoes. We make the green beans, right? But the outcome is always super short. We take very minimal time to actually eat the meal. It's all about the memories and the experiences of cooking it.
When your kid eats a roll.
Right. So a growth mindset foundation really is in that metaphor of spending time in the kitchen. The turkey might be burnt, there might be mistakes along the way, and we're creating those memorable dishes. Maybe we got your grandmother's recipe being passed down, or we have powerful conversations of, I've always made it with this. I never thought of using paprika. So this idea of being the sous chef instead of the chef, the student taking on the reins, but slowly.
Right, and it kind of reminds me too of when you make something for the first time after maybe your mom's done Thanksgiving dinner for a while, you put a little spin on things and your mom's like,
this isn't right.
Or someone else changes something and you're like, how did you not make the green bean casserole the same way as we've always had it? There's this change in perspective of now letting someone else
take over,
move up and move in. And that's really what this idea of middle school and let's cook is all about.
All right. So when we're thinking about the student as the chef, and we are the sous chefs as the parent, we have to ask the right questions, but not all at once. So the very first one, I think, is what's on the menu, right? And essentially that translates to, what is your workload tonight? Not what do you have for homework, but what is your workload? Because...
And that's really important to phrase it like that, because sometimes students don't consider projects or tests homework, but they will consider them something they have to prepare for.
Yeah.
So asking the right question will give you a better outcome on what you're really looking for.
Yeah. And if you can phrase it into one question instead of three, right? So if you said, what is your homework? Do you have any tests? Do you have any projects? That's a bunch of questions. But if we can center, what is your workload tonight? Then that's one question.
And you may have to train your child to know what that means a little bit too.
Yeah.
Like realizing that when I'm asking you about your workload, I'm also asking the
All
whole
those
encompassing workload.
Yeah. And then when you are helping out with the right questions, there's also what recipe are you using, right? So you have the menu, you have the recipe, and then translating, is the assignment posted online, or do you have a paper copy? Is there a rubric, right? Identifying where to get support or the instructions to the assignment, at making sure your child is aware that those instructions exist.
Right. And we're also trying to hope that we're giving you some helpful questions, because maybe you didn't even know that assignments could be posted online.
Yeah.
Or maybe this is a new thing for you where you're requiring your child to write things down in an agenda or a planner.
Yeah.
So where are you also expecting this information to come from your child?
And then have them show that instructional piece, show it to them, or show me what that rubric looks like. So when you're asking for the recipe, you're not going to accept, I got it in my head, right? Like, I got it in my head.
Right.
When you're asking for a recipe, you want to see those instructions. So those step-by-step information. So having your child navigate to where those instructions are and having you see it is being a good sous chef, right? Knowing what those instructions are going to be.
And the third part of that is, how can I help you? Is there anything that I can do to help you?
And the most important piece is, if they say no, then get out of the way.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, let it go.
Because they want to take the reins on this. And that can be tricky to step back and let them. But it doesn't mean that you can't have any more part. It just means that your check-in piece is going to be different moving forward.
Yeah. And so based on the above, you as the sous chef kind of predict what the chef might need and offer help in maybe more subtle ways than before. You can ask for help. What do you need? Sure. And then a middle school student might be nothing, might give you limited information. But then
the one thing that most middle school students struggle with the most that I see is time management.
Yes.
And this is a really important piece that parents can help with, I think.
Which we did talk about in our first episode over executive functioning skills. Tune in. But you also have some experience of your own that you can throw in. I have, like, if you know that they're constructing something and you know that that glue that they intended on using is not going to work because of material issues, then you can come in saying, I have here some of this type of glue if you choose to use it.
Exactly.
Right.
Like, you're going to know that a glue stick is not going to work for felt very well. Yeah. You can intervene a little sooner and stuff like that.
Right.
Totally okay. Another thing is checking in, frequent check-ins. How's everything going? But also, like, maybe not every 20 minutes. That might be a little too much. So finding a good balance of letting them work and then back up.
Mm-hmm. And then you can kind of see how they're progressing and really focus on that process and kind of chime in on, well, I have an idea that might work well with what you're envisioning, what you are wanting, and kind of give that expertise there. Listen with love is a big piece to giving instructional feedback to middle school. And if you're thinking that the student is a chef, think of that your child as Gordon Ramsay. You would never criticize in a negative fashion or tell Gordon Ramsay what to do. He would bite your head off. So would a middle school student. So I would plant the seed or gently add an idea. So phrasing it in a way of, have you thought about this? Or these are my favorite 2 words to criticism, is I wonder. I wonder if
we tried this, how would it work? Or I wonder if this material might be better than that material.
It is fantastic.
And let them process that.
Correct. Because you're then letting them think about it and consider it without an aggressive approach.
And really listening with love also means that you're going to accept their ideas.
Yes.
Even if you don't agree.
Try it. You can encourage them to try that idea, because that allows them to, you can anticipate the mistakes that are going to be made. That's part of the process. But they have to see it themselves too. If it's shut down before they even try, then you're creating that fixed mindset of
they're not good enough.
They're not good enough, and we don't. That is detrimental. So this idea of trying something and seeing what happens.
And sometimes you have your personal children. You have one that'll take your ideas and roll with it, and they're gonna, oh, that's great, Mom, blah 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 blah. And then you have another child that might be like, no, I'm not doing that. Basically, probably because you just said to. So you really have to figure out the learning styles of your personal children in this process, and that's part of listening with love and identifying the needs of that every child is different.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last biggest piece, I think, is just reflecting during the process in those check-ins and maybe even at the conclusion. If we're at a Thanksgiving dinner, no matter how the turkey comes out, we're going to embrace it because it was cooked by family, it was cooked with love.
And you don't have time to recook a new one.
And you don't have time to recook a new one.
And sometimes that's how school projects work too.
Yes. Just remember, it's their project. We're going to embrace it. Wherever it turns out, you never know what's going to happen regarding the assessment of it. But you want to share in their pride if they are proud, and you need to take desire for it to be perfect out of the process. So a couple of good questions for a sous chef to make as their student, as the chef is creating this and has created this endeavor, whether it's an essay or a project. You might ask, is this your best effort? Right?
What do you think?
What do you think?
What are your final thoughts on this? How do you think that worked?
And they might ask you what you think of it. But if they do, I would flip it and say, well, what do you think?
That's right. Because, yes, our opinion matters to them, but it's really more important on what their thoughts are on their own.
Yes.
In middle school.
Yeah, and I think that asking if they are proud of it, do you like what you did, and adds that idea of it's about ownership on them and agency on them. So if they said, yes, I'm really proud of it, you can celebrate. And if it's no, not quite, well, then that conversation of what could we do differently next time, or what could we do differently now? What do we have time to do? Or what did you learn in the process? Those kind of questions can come up again. Now, the biggest piece beyond the reflection, I think, is when the food critics give feedback, right? You got your teacher gives the feedback, the educator gives the feedback, the food critics give whether it's positive or negative. How you react matters to support a growth mindset. Do you say, and we go back to the beginning of our scenarios, do you say, well, how do you understand your mistakes if it's not the goal, right? If the goal wasn't achieved? Or do you go, congratulate them for the achievement so far? We're going to talk more about achievement and assessment for our next episode. But right now is just about the growth.
The process. And really reminding them, even if, maybe they worked so hard on this project and they got a B.
Yeah.
And a B can be really, really good when you know it's their best effort. Maybe it was not reading the rubric correctly. Maybe they completely missed a point and that's why they got things taken off. But celebrating what they did do and remembering the moment when they were really proud of it. Because you don't want to diminish the work that they did put in.
Correct. And with that said, I think, Kelly, it is time for
exit ticket time. Exit ticket time.
where we give you our 3 takeaways that respond to our questions from earlier.
Absolutely, because in the teacher world, an exit ticket is really just a check for understanding. So, exit ticket point number 1. It's just middle school. Use these years to focus on the process and focus on the growth.
Number 2, it's just middle school. By nurturing a growth mindset, you are nurturing confidence, metacognition, and resilience.
Exit ticket number 3. It's just middle school. In order for students to cook, we need to step aside and let them. Be a sous chef, not the main chef.
Thank you for tuning in to our podcast of
It's Just Middle School
with Sarah
and Kelly.
We very much appreciate you listening. Tune in next time where we talk about assessment.
Let us cook!